My name is Heinrich Bauer, and I was a corporal in the German Army Artillery Division during the summer of 1942. When I close my eyes, I can still see the endless columns of soldiers, the dust rising from the boots and the heat shimmering above the steel barrels of our guns. We were on our way to Sevastopol, the fortress city on the Black Sea. I was 23 then, too young to understand what war truly was. The officers told us Sevastopol would fall quickly, that the Soviets were exhausted, broken, and starving. We believed them. We had been advancing for months, and the thought of defeat seemed impossible. Our unit had been assigned a new weapon, a powerful short-range siege cannon, designed to destroy bunkers and fortifications within close and medium distances. They called it Donnerfaust, the Thunder Fist. It was a monstrous thing, the size of a small house mounted on tracks and pulled by heavy tractors. We were proud of it. To us, it was a symbol of our strength, of German engineering and precision. I remember the first time we fired it. The ground shook so violently that the air itself seemed to split open. The noise was unbearable, a deep rolling thunder that echoed through the valleys. The shell tore through concrete as if it were paper. We cheered. Some of the younger soldiers laughed, shouting that no fortress could withstand such power. We believed we were unstoppable. At night, by the campfires, we talked about home, about beer, music, and girls waiting for us. My closest friends were Friedrich, a quiet Bavarian with sharp eyes, and Otto, a mechanic from Berlin who treated every machine like a living thing. They kept me sane in those long, endless marches. But even then, something felt wrong. The villages we passed through were burned and silent. The air smelled of smoke and rot. The faces of the local people were filled with hatred, not fear, but hatred. We told ourselves it didn't matter. We were soldiers. We followed orders. We didn't yet understand that every kilometer we advanced brought us closer not to victory, but to disaster. When we reached the outskirts of Sevastopol, the city looked like something out of another world, carved into cliffs and rock, bristling with concrete bunkers and hidden gun positions. The Soviets had turned it into a fortress. Every hill, every tunnel, every trench was alive with resistance. Our commanders were confident. They told us that the Donnerfaust would break them. They said the Russians would finally see the full might of German artillery. Friedrich and I were assigned to the loading crew. It took 8 men to load a single shell, each one heavier than a man. Otto worked with the engineers, checking the pressure valves and alignment before each shot. He loved that machine, spoke to it like a person. She listens, he'd say with a grin, if you treat her right. The first bombardment began before sunrise. The Donnerfaust roared and the earth itself trembled. Every shot tore through the hillsides, turning stone into dust. The echoes rolled down to the sea and back again. The officers shouted that this was history, that our names would be remembered. For days we fired. For nights we reloaded. Our uniforms were soaked with sweat, our ears ringing constantly from the thunder. Every explosion felt like the world cracking open. Then, one morning, the firing stopped. Not because of orders, but because something answered back. From beyond the hills, deep and distant, came a sound unlike any we had heard before. The Soviets were returning fire. Shells began to fall around us. Not many at first, but close enough to make the ground shake. One struck near the supply trucks, scattering metal and men alike. Otto shouted through the smoke, "They've found our range." The officers yelled at us to hold position, to keep firing. But I could see the panic growing. The Donnerfaust was powerful, yes, but it was slow. It couldn't move easily, couldn't hide, and the Soviets were learning where to hit. By nightfall, our camp was a crater field. We worked under lanterns, patching the gun, dragging ammunition through mud. Friedrich said quietly, "Heinrich, this city won't fall. It will swallow us instead." I didn't answer, but in my heart I felt the same. By the 3rd week, Sevastopol had become hell on earth. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The sun barely reached us through the haze. The smell, a mix of burning oil, gunpowder, and blood, clung to everything. We stopped noticing it after a while. The Donnerfaust kept firing, day after day. Each round was an earthquake. But the Soviets, they never stopped. No matter how much we shelled them, they always answered back. Their artillery positions moved constantly, hidden deep in the cliffs or disguised among the ruins. Every time we thought we had silenced them, another barrage came from somewhere else. Friedrich grew quieter with each passing day. He used to hum songs from home while we worked, but now he didn't say much. Otto, though, refused to give up. He worked like a madman, fixing the gun after every hit, swearing in Berlin slang and calling it my stubborn girl. Then came the day we tested the new shells. Shorter range, heavier payload. The engineers said they would crush anything within a few hundred meters. We loaded one at dawn, sweat freezing on our faces from the sea wind. When the shell fired, it felt like the sky tore apart. The shockwave knocked us backward. The ground opened in front of us, dust rising so high it blotted out everything. The officers cheered, said the shot had vaporized a Soviet strongpoint, but when the dust cleared, we saw it had hit one of our own forward trenches. Dozens of German soldiers were gone, vaporized in seconds. The officers ordered silence, no reports, no witnesses. The Donnerfaust was perfect, they said, without flaw. That night, I couldn't sleep. The screams from the wounded echoed down the valley, and I kept thinking of the faces of those men we'd killed, boys, really, no older than me. Friedrich whispered, "This isn't war anymore, it's madness." The next morning, he didn't show up for roll call. Some said had been hit by shrapnel during the night. Others said had simply walked away into the fog. I wanted to believe the second one. Still, the orders came. We loaded, aimed, and fired again, and each time the Donnerfaust roared. I began to wonder if we were destroying the enemy or ourselves. By the time July came, everything had changed. The pride, the confidence, it was gone. What remained was exhaustion and fear. Sevastopol wasn't a city anymore, it was a graveyard. The earth was black from fire, the sea full of wrecks, and the men they looked older every day, as if each sunrise stole a little more of their souls. We kept firing the Donnerfaust, but the weapon was dying too. The barrel was cracked from overuse, the recoil gears jammed constantly, and spare parts were impossible to get. Otto fought to keep it alive, his hands blistered, eyes red from lack of sleep. He treated that cannon like a wounded comrade. But the Soviets were no longer just defending. They were attacking. One night, the horizon lit up red. We thought it was another bombardment. But then reports came in. Soviet troops were counterattacking along the entire front. They hit us hard. Mortars, tanks, men crawling out of the smoke like ghosts. It was chaos, shouting, fire, confusion. Orders contradicted each other. Communications broke down. Our position was surrounded for a time. I remember Otto yelling at me over the noise, "Heinrich, we can't hold this. We have to pull back." But the order came, "Hold your ground." We fought all night. The Donnerfaust fired until the barrel glowed red. Shell after shell, even when we knew the Soviets were closing in. Every explosion tore more of the earth apart, and still they came. Fearless, relentless. By dawn, the attack faded, leaving the valley covered in smoke and bodies. We'd survived, but just barely. The air was filled with the moans of the wounded. Otto sat beside the cannon, his face gray, whispering, "It's not worth it anymore, Heinrich." None of it. I didn't know what to say. I looked at the Donnerfaust, our mighty weapon, the pride of German engineering, and saw nothing but ruin. Round it, the ground was littered with the bodies of both sides mixed in the same mud. Later that day, we got the news that chilled every man in the camp. The Red Army was advancing from the north. The push toward Sevastopol was over. The retreat had begun. When the retreat order came and no one spoke, the officers just handed out maps with shaking hands and said we were to fall back toward the Dnieper. Sevastopol, the city we had bled for, was to be left behind. It felt like defeat, not the kind shouted through radio messages, but the quiet kind that seeps into your bones. The Donnerfaust couldn't be moved easily. She was too heavy, too damaged. Otto refused to leave her. "We can fix her," he kept saying. "We can tow her out. She's still alive." But the engines were gone, and the Soviets were closing in fast. Command ordered the gun destroy, to prevent capture. You'll never forget the look on Otto's face when the charges were set. He stood there, hands trembling, as if watching a friend being executed. When the explosion came, the sound echoed across the valley. The once great cannon split apart, metal twisting like paper, smoke rising into the sky. Otto turned away, silent. We began the march back, a broken column of men, dragging what little equipment we had left. Along the road lay burned trucks, shattered helmets, and abandoned weapons. The retreat wasn't organized, it was chaos. Planes strafed the columns from above. Artillery ranged from the hills. Every kilometer felt like a lifetime. Friedrich's voice haunted me. This city will swallow us. Had been right. It had swallowed our pride, our machines, our belief that we could not be beaten. One night, as we camped in the ruins of a village, Otto sat beside me and whispered, "Heinrich, do you think they'll ever forgive us?" I didn't answer. How could I? I wasn't even sure I could forgive myself. The next morning, a Soviet patrol hit us at dawn. The fight was short and brutal. Otto was hit in the leg, couldn't walk. I dragged him behind a wall, but we were cut off. He looked up at me with half a smile and said, "Go. Leave me. It'll slow you down." I wanted to argue, but his eyes told me he meant it. I left him my water, my pistol, and my shaking hand on his shoulder. Then I ran. I never saw Otto again. That day, I stopped being a soldier. I was just a man trying to survive. The road out of Sevastopol was no longer a road. It was a graveyard. Burned-out tanks, overturned trucks, and endless lines of wounded men. Horses lay where they fell, and the smell of death followed us like a shadow. I walked alone most of the way. My uniform was torn, my boots falling apart, my rifle lost somewhere in the mud. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Every now and then, I saw small groups of Germans moving in the same direction. Silent, empty-eyed. No one spoke of victory anymore. Behind us, the sky glowed red. Sevastopol was burning. We heard the distant rumble of artillery. But it wasn't ours this time. The Soviets had turned our own weapons against us. The Donnerfaust, the great thunder fist, the pride of our army, now lay shattered in the dust, and their guns filled the sky with thunder instead. By mid-July, the Red Army had taken back the city. The news reached us like a whisper at first, then as a confirmed order. Sevastopol lost. Pull back. Regroup. But regroup where? There was nowhere left to go. I was captured near a river crossing days later. The Soviet soldiers didn't kill me. They were too tired for that. They gave me water, searched me, and marched me with other prisoners toward the rear. Along the way, I saw things I will never forget. Villages destroyed beyond recognition, families returning to ruins, children searching through rubble for scraps of light. And yet, amid all that horror, there was strength in their faces. They had lost everything, but they were standing again. One old man spat in my direction and said something I didn't understand. But I didn't need a translation. His eyes said enough. For months after, in the prisoner camp, I thought about Otto Friedrich and all the men who had believed we were unstoppable. We had come to destroy a fortress and a people's spirit. Instead, they had destroyed our illusion of power. When the war finally ended, I went home, or what was left of it. My village in Bavaria was quiet, my family gone. I spent my days working the land, my nights haunted by thunder. Now, many years later, I still hear that sound sometimes. The roar of the Donnerfaust shaking the ground beneath my feet. But I no longer feel pride when I remember it. Only shame, because in Sevastopol, I learned the truth every soldier learns too late. No weapon, no machine. No empire can crush the will of those who fight for their home. And though we marched in with thunder, we left in silence.